All right, chicos y chicas, I'm going to help you with the graphing here. Normally, I set my lab groups free to do their own graphing because you are very capable young men and women. However, during this lab, AP Biology is teaching you a statistic that you have never heard of before called ET50. And it's probably just easier if I walk you through how to graph it than it is if you have to try to figure it out on your own. So for this lab, really, the only part that you're going to be doing independently is the questions at the end. So you just have to follow along with me and do it along, do the graphs along with me. So here's what I'm going to recommend. Really, it's important that you guys watch this video together as a lab group. And I know that the sound might be a little bit screwy, so do what you can to make it work. Choose one person in your lab group to present the video, and they should share their entire screen and then not have their sound on mute or anything. Just do it that way so that everybody can listen. And then that person is in charge of pausing the video periodically. Then scoot that off to the left side of your screen so that you can watch the video while you work on the lab document. So then have your lab document open on the right side. And I'm going to ask you to rotate who is working on the graph so that everybody has an opportunity to hone their graphing skills. And everybody else can be watching and help that person who's working on the graph, give them tips. If they have a typo that they're not noticing, help them fix the typo. Whatever, but just give them that support. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how to graph. That's a little bit different this time. I will mention I've entered all the data in on my form here so you can see my data. Would you take a moment and just make sure that yours looks absolutely exactly number for number the same as mine. So for example, in column 2, it should say 0, then 6, then 10. If you've entered the data correctly. Just to remind you, the way it works is that you want the total number of disks that are floating at the end of that time period. So there were no disks floating during time period 1 of our warm water trial. There were 6 disks floating by 1 minute and 59 seconds. So we put a 6 here. And then by 2 minutes and 59 seconds, all 10 were floating. So double check that you entered the data correctly there. And if you notice, I say data and data backwards and forwards, and so just get over it. All right, and then check your information here and make sure that your numbers match up with mine exactly. Pause the video if you need to make sure that yours looks exactly the same as mine does, because we're going to be graphing the same stuff. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start reading right here. Once you've made the first 3 graphs, which we're about to do, you're going to add in a little statistic that's called ET50, which is the estimated time for 50% of the disks to rise for each trial. That is, rate is a change in a variable over time. You guys know that. The time required for 50% of the leaf disks to float is represented as ET50. The median is our statistic this time instead of the mean. Remember, median is the middle number, so it's the 5th disk and how long it takes the 5th disk to float instead of the mean. Well, why aren't we using the mean this time? It's written in bold print why we're not using the mean time. The median will generally provide a better estimate of the central tendency of the data for this lab, not for all labs, but for this lab, because on occasion, a disk fails to rise or it takes a very long time to do so. Remember what happened in our cold water trial? Remember how long it was taking for those disks to rise? I didn't even bother to collect times on disks 7 through 10 because I had already collected my time on disk 5, so I knew that we would have our ET50. All right, and then green, what's written in green here is also very important, and it's going to come back in a few minutes, but I want this in the back of your head. The ET50 times to float are the inverse of the rate of photosynthesis. As you will see when you graph the ET50 times for each experiment in figure 4 below. So I just want you to put that in the back of your head for right now. Don't worry about it. And as you go to graph number 4, you're going to be like, oh, that doesn't look right. And then we're going to have to fix it, and that will be graph number 5. So we're going to be rotating who's graphing. The first thing, remember, when you see it says points scored, you know you haven't edited this graph. This is just the Google Docs sort of rough draft graph. So go ahead and click on this button right here. And when it says open source, click on open source. It's going to take you a moment to get your source opened. I've already opened all of my sources, so I'm going to go hop over to the other side. And there we go. It wasn't opening right away. Now, what they always give you are two columns, and I don't want this second column. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the box, and I'm going to drag it down. Do you see that I grabbed it and dragged it down? And then I'm just going to hit delete and clear all of that data. I don't want that second set of data. Now, what I want to do right now is change what the titles are for each of these columns. So for column B, I'm going to call that the total number number of floating leaf discs, not lead discs, leaf discs. Oh my gosh, I'm having trouble discs. There we go. And I'm even gonna make this open up so we can read it. There we go. So I opened it up nice and wide. And our total number of floating leaf discs, we're gonna get that data from the data table. Over here, I'm gonna change the title, and this title is going to be time interval. So we're going to do the time interval. So it's basically how many minutes it took. And so we're going to go ahead and start with time intervals. Okay, so let me go back to my original data. And we're going to go up here and we're going to look at time interval 1 was 0, time interval 2 was 0, time interval 3 was 1, 9, and 10. So I'm just going to type them in. I'm going to remember 0, 0, 1, 9, 10. So I'm going to go ahead and type those in for my floating leaf discs. So 0, 0, 1, 9, and 10. And going back. And that was for my room temperature trial. And then that was time intervals 1 through 5. So I'm going to go back and change my time intervals. Come on. To 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There we go. And so now I've actually graphed. That's the correct graph that's showing right here. However, none of the labels are correct. So we got to fix those labels. So I'm going to click on the 3 dots in the corner, and I'm going to click Edit Chart. And immediately I'm going to click Customize over on this side. So I'm clicking on Customize, and I'm going to change the chart axis and titles. There's a few other things that we'll need to do. So the title is certainly not points scored. So we could do any number of different titles. But for this one, why don't we do total number of floating leaf discs? Oops. Total number of floating leaf discs versus, let's talk about the temperature at 22.5. You're going to have to figure out how to do the degree symbol on a Chromebook. It's Option Shift and then the number 8 on a Mac. I don't know what the degree symbol is on a Chromebook, so you're going to have to figure that out. So at 22.5 degrees Celsius, versus time in minutes, So help your partner who's doing that typing to get that title in correctly. And I'm going to actually, if you look over here, I'm going to open this graph up wider so that my title fits in perfectly. And that's awesome. I'm going to edit again because my editing went away. And hit Customize one more time. Okay, this time I'm going to change not the chart title, but I'll do the horizontal axis title. And the horizontal axis title is time in minutes. Time in minutes. And I will change my vertical axis title to total number of floating leaf discs. Total number of floating leaf discs. You could actually copy and paste this at some point if you're a slow typist, and I kind of am a little bit pokey. All right, so it looks like we've got an awesome graph here. It looks like the graph is all done. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to click on the graph so that all the boxes around the edge are there, and I'm going to do a command copy. You do whatever you need to do, but you're trying to copy just the graph. Then I'm going to go back to our original and watch what creative, interesting thing I do. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to delete our graph. I made it go away. I deleted. I'm going to insert, and I'm going to insert a drawing because we're going to add something to this graph that the graphing program doesn't allow you to do. So I've inserted my drawing, and now I'm going to paste the graph that we just made, I'm going to paste it right here. Do I want to link it to the spreadsheet? Yes, I do. In case I made a mistake, I can always edit the original spreadsheet and then come back to the drawing and it will update. I will be able to update it. So I'm going to go ahead and hit paste, and there's my graph, and it allows me to update as needed. Over here. Okay, so now what we're going to do is calculate or add to our graph the ET50. So the ET50 is, I'm going to make a line. I'm going to click on line, and I hope it did it correctly. And I'm going to go to where there's the fifth disc. The fifth disc would be right here. And I'm going to draw a line across to where it intersects with our actual line. And then I'm going to make an arrow and make it go straight down. And I'm trying to make these as straight as possible. It's a little bit hard to make it perfectly straight. So if it's a little crooked, my apologies. I'm going to make that arrow go down right to here. And I like to highlight it. I like to make it a different color so that it stands out. Oops, didn't mean to do that. There we go. Oh, for some reason, the other one didn't turn red. Did it turn red? Oh, it did. It's red. Okay. I think that's red. It's hard to see. It's such a thin. You could make the line thicker if you wanted to. I'm choosing not to do that. Okay, so now I'm going to add a text box. I'm going to put the text box right here, and I'll move the text box in just a moment. So our ET50 in this case equals, and let's see right where. So this is where the fifth disc rows. We move across to the amount of time and we go straight down. So we're using the graph to extrapolate, that's the word, extrapolate ET50. So I would say that ET50, gosh, it's right in between 3 and 4. So I'm going to say my ET50 is 3 minutes and 30 seconds. I'm going to go ahead and make this text box smaller. And I think I'm going to highlight this in red to make it jump out. So red. And then the 50, this graphing program or the drawing program doesn't allow you to make subscripts or superscripts. So I'm just going to make the font size smaller. So I'm going to make the 50 and a font size 8, and it looks like it's a subscript. So that part's done. And now I'm going to move this text box, if it'll let me move it. There we go. Right here, and I'll center it as needed. There we go. So I've got my ET50 noted on the graph. So I am done with graph number 1. I'm going to hit save and close. Now I can always double click on it if I want to change anything. I hate how the drawing program always makes things look a little bit blurry. I don't think the clarity is what I want it to be, but it is what it is. Okay, so we're ready to go on to graph number 2. So I'm going to click on graph number 2. I've already opened my source, but you're going to hit open source right now. So hopefully somebody new is graphing graph number 2. I'm going to go ahead and go to my other tab and open graph number 2. And I'm going to start out the same way. I want to get rid of the second column that says period 2. So I'm going to grab this little box right here. I'm going to drag it down so that they're all highlighted, and then I'm just going to hit delete, and they all went away. That's awesome. So now I'm going to do the same thing that I did before. I'm going to open this column up a little bit, and I'm going to change the name to total number of floating leaf discs. Total number, number of floating. You really can copy and paste this if that works faster for you. Leaf discs. And then on this side, I'm going to open it a little bit wider, and I'm going to write, there we go, time interval for that one. Here we go. Okay, so now our time intervals, let's go back and look at our second experiment. I'm going to go back up to the data. The second experiment only had 3 time intervals, so 1, 2, 3, that's easy to remember, and it's 0, 6, and 10. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that data in right now, 0, 6, and 10. So 0, and then, didn't do that right. 0, 6, and 10. And then the last one I'm going to delete because there were only 3 time intervals. And then I'm going to change where it says team. I'm going to change it to 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm going to delete the last one. So now my graph technically is correct. I have exactly what I need to graph. I just need to fix up. I just need to edit the chart a bit. So as we did last time, we're going to hit customize, chart axis and titles. I'm going to change the title to Give me just a second. Total number of floating leaf discs at, and this time the temperature was 39 degrees Celsius. Oh, it looks like I have a typo here. Help your partners if they have a typo. 39 degrees Celsius versus time in minutes. That's my title, and it fit. Oops, I clicked out of it. Didn't really mean to do that. So I'm going to edit my chart and customize again. And this time I want to change I'm going to change this to my horizontal. That's time in minutes. And I'm going to change my vertical to number of floating leaf discs. Number of floating leaf. Gosh, I have trouble with that. Discs. That's hard for me to type for some reason. All right, and it looks like my graph is completely done. So I'm going to click on the graph so that the boxes, the little blue boxes around the edge are there, and I'm going to copy it. So I just did a Command C. That's how you do it on a Mac. I don't know how you do it. I don't remember how you do it on the Chromebook. So you guys copy it. I'm going to go back here. And I'm going to go back to this graph here, and we're going to delete this graph because we want to draw on our graph. So I'm going to hit delete. I hit delete and nothing happened. I'm going to try that again. So delete, there we go. And now I'm going to insert a drawing, and I'm going to paste the graph into the drawing so that we can write on the drawing. So now I'm going to do a Command V or a paste. Yes, I want it to link to my spreadsheet in case I made a mistake. I personally never make mistakes, but perhaps some of you made mistakes. Just kidding. All right, we need to find our ET50. So we're going to find where leaf disc 5 would be. I'm going to draw a line. So I clicked on the line icon up here. And I'd actually like it to be red, but I'll change that in just a minute. So roughly at the 50, it's hard to make a straight line. And if I remember correctly, you can never get it perfect. It looks like it's a little bit above what I think would be number 5. That's okay. So if you're in the ballpark, I'm fine with it, as long as you're getting the idea. And then I'm going to make an arrow to make it go down. And I'm going to lift up. I don't know if that's straight. Maybe it's a little bit crooked, but whatever. I like to change the color. So I changed that one's color. And I'm going to change this one's color also to red. And now I'm going to open a text box and I'm going to write ET50 equals. And now our ET50. Now this one's a little bit more complicated because the graphing program converted minutes into decimals, which is a little bit complicated. So 1.5, remember, is 1 minute and 30 seconds. So how many seconds are we right here? Well, 30 and 60 seconds. So halfway would be 45. So I don't know, you can do what you want, maybe 150. So I'm going to guess about 1 minute 50 seconds is our ET50. I like to, oh my gosh, I'm having trouble. I like to highlight the whole thing and to change the color to red. And I'm going to make the 50 a font level of 8 so that it looks like a subscript. I'm going to shrink up the text box. I'm going to try to shrink up the text box. What did I do wrong? Shrink up the text box and then drag it on over to right here until it looks good. Click out, and I'm happy with that. ET50 is 1 minute and 50 seconds. So we are done with graph number 2. Let's go ahead and graph number 3. So I'm going to scroll down here. This is graph number 3. The third person should be graphing now. So go over here, open your source. So open your source. I've already opened my source, so I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the next tab. And I'm again going to delete period 2. And this particular graph is much more time consuming because of the amount of time that it took. So I'm going to change period 1 to say, total number of floating leaf discs. Total number of floating leaf discs. And I'm going to change column A to say time interval. And now this is where it gets to be a pain because you have many, many minutes involved here. I'm going to move my graph over just a little bit. You have 28 minutes, I think, that we have to graph here. So I'm going to start with a, start with a 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oops. Oh my gosh, having trouble. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh my gosh. What did I do? That's supposed to be 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 26, 27, and 28. I think we had to go to 28. I don't remember for sure. Okay, and then I do remember that the vast majority of them were zeros. So we're going to do 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Lots of zeros. Whole lot of zeros until we got to, I don't remember what time interval, and I'm just going to see if I can memorize it. So I'm going to go back up to my data table, and it was starting at time interval 21. It was 1, 1, 1, 3, 4, 4, 4, 6. 1, 1, 1, 3, 4, 4, 4, 6. 1, 1, 1, 3, 4, 4, 4, 6. And I'm just going to double check. So that was 6 at time interval 28. Just want to make sure. 6 at time interval 28. Sure enough. Oops, clicking on the wrong tab here. All right, so the graph is ready to go. It just needs to be edited with the correct title and everything. So customize. Title will be, I wonder, actually, I could copy it for once. I'm going to copy it. Oh, I made it go away. Oh, well. Try it again. Edit. Oh, customize. Hard to do all of this. Total number of floating leaf discs. Total number of floating leaf discs at, and this one was 12 degrees Celsius versus time in minutes. So that's our title. And then we want the horizontal axis is time in minutes. And our vertical axis is total number of floating leaf discs. I think I did that, or just number. I don't need the word total. I copied and pasted that one. Number of floating leaf discs, and that's on my other axis. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, oh, I know what I wanted to do. This one is also interesting because it doesn't have very good, so I'm going to show you some graphing techniques to make this a better chart. What I don't like is the fact that it ends at 25. The graphing program ended it at 25. It makes it very difficult for us to find our ET50 because it's not numbered. So I'm going to go ahead and click on grid lines and ticks and see if I can remember how to do this. So I'm going to do the major grid lines and minor grid lines, and let's see, the minor spacing, give me just a second, should be 1. There we go. So notice as we're going across, I just added a line. So there's 4, 5 would be right here, 6 is there. So that's very helpful. Now I want to do the same on the horizontal axis. I want to have some grid lines that are going to help me when I'm trying to draw my lines. So, oh, and I forgot, give me just a second on the horizontal axis. So I just clicked on the tab that's called horizontal axis. I want to set my values from 0 to 30 so that I actually have a number. So notice now I have a number at the end. And now I'm going to go back to grid lines and ticks. And I'm on the horizontal axis and I want major grid lines. Give me just a second. Let's try minor grid lines. And I want it to be 10. Nope. 9. I think 9 is right. Let me just make sure that's right. So 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. So there we go. So we've got the perfect grid now so that we can tell a little bit more clearly where ET50 is for this weird one. Okay, so my graph is completely done at this point. So I'm gonna go ahead and copy it. So I clicked on it. I'm doing a control copy. I'm gonna go back over to our lab. I'm gonna delete that particular blank graph. So be very careful and make sure that that's figure number 3 that you're deleting. And I'm gonna hit delete. And I'm going to insert drawing and new. And I'm going to paste this new graph. And yes, I want it to link to spreadsheet. And now I'm going to draw the ET50 lines. So I'm going to click on the line right here. And actually, it's already drawn for us because we did the major tick lines. So that's one. And then going down, I'm going to do the arrow. I went a little bit past it. I think I'm going to scooch that arrow over just a smidgen. Oops, let's see if I highlight it, if I can do that. Here we go. I think that looks about right. So now I need to, oops, I guess it's a little bit off, just a tiny bit off from the thing, but that's best I can do. Okay, so now I'm going to add my ET50 text box. So ET50 is, and let's take a look. So that was disc number 5. So as we went across, we go down for the time in minutes, and that was 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, just a little bit above 27. So why don't we say 27:10? So 27 minutes, 10 seconds is what we're going to report for ET50. I'm going to highlight it and make it all red. And I'm going to make 50, oops, the 50 a font size of 8. And say, oops, and I need to move it. I need to move the text box to the correct location. Went a little too small there. Try that one more time. There we go. Let's move it up here. Try that. Yep. And that looks perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save and close. And we are now done with our third graph. And I just want to double check that these all look good. Yep, the graphs look awesome as far as I can tell. I'm trying to hurry, so forgive me if I screw something up. All right, now the next section, we're going to graph the ET50s. However, right now our ET50s are in minutes and seconds, so we need to convert time to decimals. So the first time that we had was 330. That's pretty easy. We can convert that to a decimal fairly easily. It's 3.5, but let's see how you do that exactly. So the equation is right here. You put the minutes first, so you write down the number of minutes, which was 3, and then you take the seconds, which was 30, and divide it by 60. So 30 divided by 60 is 0.5. So right here, we know that it's going to be 1 point, and now we're going to do 50 divided by 60. I'm going to open up, oops, a new tab, and I'm going to type in online calculator and do 50 divided by 60. And you all can do this faster than me. Sorry that it takes a moment. So 50 divided by 60. And importantly, I am not going to report all of those 3s. That's not sig figs. So I would say roughly 2 sig figs is what we should be going for on this lab. Don't worry about it too much. But if you wrote 8.333 or 0.8333333, I would definitely comment on it. So we're going to say 1.83 is pretty fair for sig figs. And then 2710, we write the 27 for the minutes, point, and now we do 10 seconds divided by 60 seconds. So I'm going to do that over here, clear, and we'll do 10 divided by 60, and we get 0.1666667. So we'll report that as 27.17 seconds. So that's it in decimal form as opposed to in the minutes and seconds form. So now we can graph that a lot more easily than we can graph these minutes. So this is our next graph. So whoever's up next, go ahead and click on this one, get ready to graph. Open your source. Remember, you click on it and then open your source. I've already opened my source, so I'm going to go to my table over here. And I'm going to, like I have every time, I'm going to delete the second column. We don't need that second column. I'm going to open column B a little bit wider, and I'm going to label it rate of photosynthesis, and then in parentheses, ET50. And then over here, I'm going to open this one a little bit wider, and I'm going to call this one temperature. And then in parentheses, we're going to go degrees Celsius. And then we're going to list the different temperatures. So one of the temperatures was 22.5. We don't need to put them in numeric order because the computer will do that for us. So the first temperature we had was 22.5. The second temperature we had was 39 degrees, and the third temperature we had was 12 degrees. Of course, that temperature rose while the lab was going forever. Okay, and then we want our ET50. So let's go back and figure out what they were. It was 3.5, this one right here, 3.5, 1.83. Oops, which tab am I on? Here we go. So this one's going to be 3.5. The next one, not doing this right. There we go, 1.83. And the last one was 27 point, was it 17? I think that's what it was, 27.17. Sure enough. Go back to the right tab here, KJ, and let's delete this last one right there. And something didn't work right. What did I screw up, everybody? 22, didn't I do that right? Sorry, I don't mean for this to take extra time. 22.5 is 3.5. Did I do that right? 39. What am I doing wrong? And 12 was 27.17. Why did I screw this up? Maybe some of you know exactly what I did and I don't see what I've messed up. ET50 was 3.5. I'm going to have to pause the video for a moment while I think about it. Okay, I paused for a second because I was having trouble figuring out why the graph didn't look right. Apparently, it does matter that I put these in numeric order. I thought the computer would be able to figure that out, and I'm not sure why, and I don't have time to figure it out why. So look at your data and make sure you have it in the correct degree order. So 12 degrees was the coldest temperature, 22.5 was our middle temperature, and 39 was our warmest temperature. If you put them in the correct temperature order, you'll get the graph that you are looking for. And apparently that is important. I am going to continue by editing this chart and giving it a good title. We're just going to call this one Photosynthesis versus Temperature, but it is a little bit misleading. Where are my titles? There we go. Photosynthesis. Oh my God. Synthesis versus temperature. That's our title. Now let's add our horizontal axis title is going to be temperature. And that's going to be degrees Celsius. And then our vertical axis is going to be rate of photosynthesis, ET50, which actually is right here. Letter B was that. So I'm going to copy that. Oh, it made my editing go away. I guess that wasn't a shortcut. I thought it would be a shortcut. I failed. Customize and chart axis and titles, and we wanted vertical axis title and paste rate of photosynthesis ET50. And now our chart is completely done. I'm going to click on it. I'm going to copy it. So I did a copy. I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to delete figure 4. Be careful which one you're deleting, everybody. So I'm going to delete figure 4. I'm going to try to delete figure 4. There we go. Every time that doesn't work quite right. I'm going to go back to insert. I'm going to go, oh, what am I doing? I forgot, you guys, we don't need to draw this anymore. So I'm going to just hit update this time. So I undid what I did. I undid. And now I'm going to press this button right here and I'm going to hit update. We're not drawing on this graph, so we don't have to delete it the way we deleted the other graphs, because the other graphs we needed to draw ET50. We've actually graphed ET50 this time, so we don't need to draw anything. All right. So now here is our graph that's titled photosynthesis versus temperature. Rate of ET50 is on the left and temperature's on the bottom. Now, this is super important. The question down here, why is this graph misleading? I want you to look at the graph, pause my video, say it to your partners. What's wrong with this graph? Look at what it says. Look at the temperature versus the rate. Look at the temperature versus the rate. What is misleading about this graph? I'm going to come back in 5 seconds. Okay, if you remember way back here in the green, it said, importantly, ET times to float are the inverse of the rate of photosynthesis. So what we're looking at is the inverse of the rate of this one, inverse of rate of photosynthesis. Remember, when the temperature is cold, the rate of photosynthesis was really slow, but it looks here like it was super fast. It's an inverse. So that makes the graph misleading. It's not wrong. It's misleading to someone who looks at it. They think, when it's colder, photosynthesis is faster, and when it's warmer, photosynthesis is slower. And that's utterly wrong. So we're going to do one more graph. Next person. We are going to instead, this time, we're going to graph the inverse of ET50. What? Okay, so watch what we do. So as we've done every single time, the new person, open your source. So I've got a new source open over here. We're going to need the online calculator again. So let's get rid of column 2 as we do every time. I'm going to grab and drag and delete. So I don't want that column 2. I'm going to go ahead and give some new titles to my columns. So column B, I'm going to call, give me just a second to make sure I use the right titles here. Column B, I'm going to call rate of photosynthesis. In parentheses, be careful, this time it's 1 over ET50. So we're doing the inverse. We're going to graph the inverse of ET50 this time, since it's the inverse of the rate of photosynthesis. Trust me, it'll make the graph look great. And then over here, again, we're going to do temperature, and then you can do degrees Celsius. Hopefully you've all figured out how to do that. Okay, so we learned the hard way here that the temperature has to be in order. So the coldest temperature we did was 12, the medium temperature was 22.5, and the warmest temperature was 39, and we delete the last temperature. Now we need to calculate the ET50. So I'm going to delete these for a second. I'll make everything go away, which is a problem, but that's okay. Let's go back to our spreadsheet and let's go back up here. So we've got ET50 was 3.5 for our middle level temperature. So I'm going to do on our calculator, I'm going to clear it, and I'm going to do 1 divided by 3.5. That's the inverse of ET50. If ET50 is the inverse of the rate of photosynthesis, then I'm flipping it over again to actually make it the correct rate of photosynthesis. So this has way too many digits in it. I'm going to go ahead and show 3 sig figs here. So I'm going to make it 0.286. So I'm going to go back to my back to my tab that has the information, and I'm going to write 0. Sorry, that's in the wrong square. This was for the 22 degree temperature, 0.286. And I'm going to double check to make sure I said that right. Yep, 0.286. All right, let's try this again. For the 39 degree, that was our warm water trial, we had a time of 1.83. So I'm going to do the inverse of that. I'm going to do 1 divided by 1.83, and we get 0.546 for the 39 degrees. So 39 degrees is 546. Did I say it right? It's hard to remember everything when I'm doing it all by myself. 546 was correct. Good. Okay, and then let's figure out what the cold water one was. It was 27.17. So we're going to do the inverse. So 1 divided by 27. 27 point. Oh my gosh. Oh, it doesn't work. I'm going to clear. 1 divided by 27.17. And we get 0.0368. 3 sig figs, the 0 right here doesn't count. So 0.0368 is what we're going to add for that one. So that's the cold water one, 0.0368. And we are done. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this graph, although it doesn't have its titles and labels, looks a lot more sensible. The cold temperature showed a slow rate of photosynthesis, and the warm temperature showed a high rate of photosynthesis. Much better. Now let's just finish with customizing this chart, get all our titles and everything in the right places. So the title for this one is going to be photosynthesis versus temperature. Oh my gosh, temperature. Our horizontal axis title is going to be temperature in degrees Celsius. And our vertical axis is going to be rate of photosynthesis. And now be careful, it's 1 over ET50 this time. And that should be it for our graph. It is all done, so we don't need to copy it or anything. I'm going to go back to our original lab. Let's go to make sure that we're on figure 5 right now. And then if I click on this, it's going to give me the update symbol. I'm going to click update, and it should update to the correct information. And we are all done. So ladies and gentlemen, I am done with this recording. You all need to just go on and calculate or to answer the questions. And then you just need to submit 1 copy of the lab for your entire lab group. Let me know if you have questions.